Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Ed. I'm a project manager, author, speaker, and a general nerd on all things project management, AI, and technology. I'm fascinated by the intersection of technology and human nature. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about a lecture I'm going to be giving this week coming up. I was asked by the Project Management Institute chapter in my area to present on a paper I just released, which you can find at edkristosic.com, on empathy in the age of AI and how that affects leaders in PMOs, how it affects project managers, and really just any professional who's worried about losing their job, right? As AI takes on more scope, we're going to have to be better at the soft skills, right? Which is, I think, what's going to be the separating factor between technology and that human touch. We're also going to talk about a pretty cool project that my brother's working on. He has a SaaS company that deals in the mortgage industry, and him and his team are building out a pretty cool tool integrating AI with some more standard tools, which I think is a pretty cool thing because AI is cool in parlor tricks, but when it comes to actually creating value, really still at this point we've got to couple it with existing tools. And then the last thing is I want to touch on a pretty cool project that I was sort of milling around on that jumps off from that cool project he was talking to me about, but more in the engineering space. I'm not an engineer by trade. I'm a technically minded person, but not a technical person. So something that I'm building for myself that I think could be pretty valuable to the firm. So let's get right into it. A couple of weeks ago, I started working on this sort of paper publication, if you will, and it was really focused on an idea that I was really fascinated by. It was that, I keep hearing everyone's going to lose their jobs to AI. And I just don't think that's the case. I mean, I think there is going to be job losses, sure, but I don't think that it's going to be as dramatic or drastic as everyone thinks, right? I think there has to be like humans at the helm of all these projects. You can't just turn AI loose and say, well, I hope it turns out okay and let me know how it's at the end. Right? You've got to have these interjections of human skill, of human empathy, leadership in general, right? That's going to have these little touch points that have to be interjected into AI processes, right? So this thought I had that kind of sat up in the middle of the night and said, you know what, this is something that I've got to talk about. So I put a publication together. Didn't really think much about it at the time, and I turned it into a little ebook, kind of just to give away to people who are interested. And I was approached by the president of the the Project Management Institute chapter in Northwest Ohio, Southwest Michigan, who's a colleague of mine. And she asked, we've really been talking about AI and leadership, and we're looking for a speaker for the next month. And your paper will be great. Would you like to present it? And I was like, wow, I didn't think anybody would care, but sure, absolutely. So I've been really kind of racking my brain to kind of figure out where I want to go with the conversation, right? Is it super into the technical side, which I don't think is, really my area of expertise. And you could certainly find sort of rundowns on all the AI news and happenings anywhere you go on YouTube. And then when it comes to pure leadership, right, you can read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or Atomic Habits or things like that. But it's really kind of where those two items come together is what most fascinates me. So, when it comes to empathetic leadership in AI projects, a couple of things stood out to me. One is that each of those two things, empathy and AI, are going to have their own roles, and they're not competing. They're really going to be complementing each other, right? So when you have a lot of data, when you have resource allocation, when you have schedules, you have things that an AI was not biased on, well, we'll get into bias, not biased to one idea or another necessarily. You can most effectively allocate resources. But what does that mean to the people who are actually in the field, who are actually doing the work, right? Who have to react to these decisions. And if you ignore that, then you're going to quickly find yourself without a project management office, with defections as it were, right? And on the other side of that, those people who think that AI is going to take their job are going to become less effective. They're going to be scared. They're going to be concerned, and they're going to push back on any kind of opportunity that you have to integrate these cool tools into your project management practice. And that's not going to be a recipe for success either. So it's kind of finding that balance, and that's kind of what's most fascinating to me in my daily practice. Working in a fairly large publicly traded company, and the speed at which we operate and advance technology, it seems sometimes glacially slow. And they're making attempts. They're making kind of um, slowly poking their nose into AI, but no real drive, right? So that's going to be where an area that I've been leading in, and hopefully this expands our opportunities into that. The second item I want to talk about is, what are some of the pitfalls that you can see in project management when it comes to AI and AI tools. So as I mentioned in the introduction, a lot of what OpenAI, a lot of what Gemini, a lot of what Llama, these are the majors, right, from Google, from Meta, from OpenAI, obviously, as ChatGPT, is that they're very good at what I like to call sort of statistical ad libs, right? Which is great if you're trying to create, content or, affiliate link blog post or something, right? Just sort of a random string of words put together. But when you need actionable, when you need uh, replicatable, when you need reliable results, you just can't really trust AI at this point. So, what do you do in the meantime, right? So that project my brother was working on, and that kind of sparked my interest in some of these tools he was using to build his stack, is sort of wrapping current tools around AI and coupling them in some pretty cool ways that you can create replicatable, reliable processes that leverage AI, right? That they're going to be using AI's generative and sort of broad skills, but applying those to a very, very regimented structure. And that way you can have, well, what we hope is repeatable results and reliable results. But again, that goes back to having the human oversight, right? That complementing arrangement where you're going to have humans looking at this stuff. You can't just turn AI loose and hope for the best, right? I've seen some pretty goofy stuff. So that's something that we've really been working on, is like, what are the tools that we can utilize? What is it that the AI can do right now? And then how do we supplement it in the meantime before we get to that full general, what is it, AGI, the general knowledge AI, which is not here yet. And I don't think it's anywhere in the near future. But if you would have asked me about a year and not even a half ago if AI was ready for the big time, I'd said no way. Well, we've had OpenAI for about a year and a half now, so that's how new all of this stuff is. So if it seems that it's both magic and a parlor trick, yes, it is, uh, which I think is pretty cool. There's a lot of opportunity. This video is sponsored by Topo Chico, obviously. I think there's a ton of opportunity for innovation. Right? There's going to be some pretty cool tools coming out over the next, 6 months, 1 year, 3, 5 years. But there's also going to be a lot of really goofy stuff that ends up not being as useful and actually probably slowing you down more than it helps. Right. A couple examples that I've seen recently is pretty much. So I was pulling up some engineering prints in Adobe, and a little dialogue popped up in the upper right corner and said, gain insights with AI. And I was like, I just need to open and present this PDF. I don't need AI insights on this PDF. Which I thought, well, maybe it would be cool. Maybe it would be useful if it was sort of long form content, or maybe if it did understand engineering or was trained. But it's the concept is called like AI wrappers. So if you think back to, I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, pretty much no software that you use on a daily basis used AI, right? It just didn't exist. Now, do you think that every small SaaS, every small software company out there sort of magically from the whole cloth out of the ether came up with their own large language models, own AI models? No. What they do is they take their existing software and they wrap it around an AI model. So either OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, which used to be Bard, I guess, but Gemini now, or Meta's Llama. And there are some like other smaller, there are other smaller models or less popular models. I've used one from Personal AI, one from Content at Scale. There are some like custom stuff out there, but the majority of software that was able to spin up an AI tool is really just an API query into one of those three models, right? So that's why any tool that you're going to use is probably about the same amount of value, and you're not going to really find anything earth-shattering in any one of them that you wouldn't find in the others, right? So that's what they stuck to: meeting notes, summaries, rewrites, stuff that is very, very useful, but also very, very specific in its value. So if we're going to move into more active project management tools and scheduling, resource management, things like that, you're really going to have to either one, which is something we'll talk about, is build your own tool, which is more of a stack than a pure AI model, or you're going to have to sort of limp along and wait until these tools are fully developed. I think both strategies are valid. I don't think that one or the other is going to, be the obvious winner, right? It just depends on the level of detail that you want to get into. It depends on the amount of work that you want to put in and how actually interested you are, or how valuable you think AI could be to your practice or your business. So, I'll get into the tool that my brother's company is building. Don't want to say too much about it. They're kind of have it under like sort of stealth mode right now. You might see it on Twitter under the Stealth Mode Co. handle. But really what it is it takes an existing database, right, of mortgage customers' information, things like that, and attaches it through an API into an OpenAI model that allows it to interact with users, querying the database, pulling useful information, storing useful information, and then really using OpenAI's language model to allow it to do something cool with it, right? So make it feel interactive to the user in a way that's not like Google searching, give me information about thing. Oh, let me find thing. It actually, returns an answer, which I think is super cool. So what I did from that was say, well, I have this thing where I always have to bother engineering for this new piece of machinery we use. And I feel bad having to constantly call Brazil or Sweden or just down the hall and ask a dumb question. Well, at least what I think is a dumb question. Well, probably they think it's a dumb question. But I was like, is there a way that I could put all the documentation into an AI model and return back sort of these general queries that I have that customers bring up all the time? What is this specification? What is this limit? How many of these are there, right? And so I had been trying to do this for a very long time, right? As soon as I think probably in the first week of ChatGPT being on the market, I was feeding documentation into the chat and getting some cool results, but nothing that was like usable or reliable. Then when ChatGPTs or the GPTs came out, which are sort of custom models you can sort of tailor, you could custom tailor the model to your specific need, right? So you build a single use GPT, and that allows you to do something cool or specific, which got better. but also, again, was unpredictable, unreliable, and not repeatable. Then my brother was showing me this, where he was able to build a knowledge base, which is basically you can put in whatever data you have that's proprietary to you or specific to your use case, store that separately. And there's things called context windows, and we can get into that, which has to do with how much information ChatGPT or any of these models can understand or remember at one time when we use memory as a sort of a human analog. Um, and it stores those in a separate knowledge base. And from there, it can use what it's powerful at, which is language processing, which is producing some usable information, but it's not relying on sort of its core memory to remember that, some certain fact or some specific thing. And that way you can reliably have a database of information where it can ask instead of no, and then return to you an answer. So, that was super cool. Something I'm toying around with, something I'm playing around with. So we'll see how it works out. I don't know. Eventually, I'm sure someone will come out with a very cool off-the-shelf option, and I'll have just learned something cool, and it will be totally useless, and I'll shelve it. It'll collect dust like most things that we end up building for ourselves. But anyway, that's just fun. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. Kind of a short episode, kind of filming this later in the evening on a Saturday. It's going to snow, so didn't really want to go do anything, but I thought that there was some pretty cool stuff that I'd seen the last couple of days, and just sort of really wrapping my head around the talk that I'm going to be giving this week. Pretty excited about that. I know there's been a lot of kind of chat around some of the groups I'm in around this subject, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to presenting sort of some thoughts. I don't think that I have all the answers. I don't think I have even most of the answers, right? Because this is so new that we really are all just sort of figuring out together, which I think is pretty cool. So that's always what I want to say, like, hey, let's learn together and go from there. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.